Welcome to Happy Talks with Dr. Alice and Donovan. Dr. Alice Fong is a holistic naturopathic doctor and founder of Amour de Soi Wellness. And Donovon Jenson is a software engineer and founder of HowToHappy.com. Together, they're out to cause more happiness in the world.
Hey everyone, welcome to Happy Talks. My name is Dr. Alice and this is Donovan. And today it's just the two of us, which we are excited. And we are going to be talking about therapy experiences. But before we do that, Donovan, take it away. What did you want to share with our listeners?
Yeah, so we've had the show for a while. We've been putting out quite a few episodes and we haven't really solicited any feedback. So we would love to hear from the audience if there's anything you like, dislike, things you want more of, less of, specific topics you want covered, anything like that. We would love to hear from you, either by leaving a comment or sending us an email. But we really want to get a little bit more feedback and be able to cater the show towards what it is that people actually want and what's going to provide the most value.
Couldn't have said it more beautifully than that. Awesome. Yes, we want to hear your feedback. So be sure to put a comment below. And let's dive into today's topic. We're going to actually share our individual experiences with therapy. So just to kick it off, I'll share a little about mine and then I'll give Donovan an opportunity to share some of his experiences. Now, I've been doing my first experience with therapy or counseling was in my undergrad college, where I just kind of did it more for a situational thing. I had just broken up with someone, and it was a very kind of traumatic breakup in that I found out that he was cheating on me and all sorts of heavy emotions that I didn't know how to deal with. And so that was just me going to my school counselor to deal with that. And I had only done 3 sessions and I was starting to feel better even after that. And then I met someone who was just such a better partner and a decent person. So that was my first exposure, but it wasn't until maybe years later. And then I think I might've had another situation where I had to go through a breakup. So I went back to a school counselor. So I was doing it situationally initially for therapy. But then I guess it wasn't until I was in med school that I started to realize that I did not have really great relationship skills, or I didn't learn them from my parents. They didn't really talk about feelings and emotions. And so it's something that I needed to kind of pursue on my own and really explore how my childhood and my upbringing and my parents, and not to put blame on them, but to understand how that kind of impacted in who I am today and how that may have contributed to me sabotaging my relationships and really understanding that I struggled and I wasn't even aware or present to this idea that I had, a lack of self-love or self-worth. Was totally oblivious to that until it started to become more apparent with therapy. And really, I've been, I mean, not currently technically I'm in couples counseling right now. So that's, I guess, a form of therapy. I've done a lot of different things, but that's just my earlier experiences. And I'm a huge advocate for therapy for everyone because, even though we can't physically see our mental health concerns or our emotional concerns, it impacts us. And we're not given this toolbox when we're kids to deal with our emotions and our feelings and relationships. And so, having therapy to navigate those challenging emotions, I think is really valuable and important. So that's my initial take. Donovan, you're welcome to share. How did you get started in it?
Yeah, before I do that, I wanted to ask you a question, which was,
Sure,
it wasn't quite clear to me. So did you feel like relationships weren't working or happening in the way you wanted, and you went to therapy and then you started uncovering a bunch of stuff? Or was it more like you went for some other reason and then dug out the relationship stuff? I'm just trying to get the order of your understanding.
Yeah, initially, the first couple times I went to therapy for just, maybe 3 sessions here and there, it was just to deal with my breakups at the time. But then it wasn't until med school I was going through a series of short-term relationships, and I was realizing I need to really dig deeper and understand, why does this keep happening to me? Like, why can't I sustain a long-term healthy relationship? And so that was when I kind of realized, I need to do it more than just sporadically or situationally. I need to really dive deeper in understanding how my past and my upbringing and the stories or things, the negative core beliefs that I developed are impacting me to do that. So I was doing in med school, I also went to my school counselor, but I was seeing her consistently for, I think, a couple of years. Initially, I think it was like once a week, but then I think it dropped to like once every other week or once a month or so. But it was just really valuable. And she, opened my eyes to a lot of things that I wasn't present and aware to. But I also have worked with a number of different counselors, and I realized, I don't always resonate with all of them. Like, everyone has something different to offer, help me uncover a lot of blind spots that I didn't see. But, I think it's about finding a person that you resonate well with, and also feeling like you're making progress. Because I do, one thing I do share with some people is that, I've probably, if you counted all the years cumulatively, I don't know, might have done like a decade of therapy here on and off sporadically. But at a certain point, for me on a personal level, and I share this, therapy is so valuable and impactful. And I think it's a really good starting point for people when they're trying to develop some self-awareness and get some more tools to deal with their emotions and their mental health. But at a certain point, I felt like I reached like a certain plateau where I was like, oh yeah, intellectually, I can understand why I'm doing certain things, but I was still sabotaging my relationships for whatever reason. I was like, oh, I get it because, of this thing happened in my past and my childhood. But for whatever reason, like intellectually, I got it, but emotionally, I wasn't quite there. So I had to explore other avenues, like other forms or modalities of therapy, like EMDR, hypnotherapy. I also did like landmark education. I did a hodgepodge thing. I did a meditation retreats. I did a lot of other things to really grow myself. But therapy was like the foundation starting point for me, which was so valuable in so many ways. Yes.
So yeah, the reason I brought it up is because it sounds like there was two different ways that you've used therapy in your life. And one is kind of this more acute, like, hey, I think I have the tools, but I just need a little bit extra support to get through this thing. And then later you found out, like, maybe I don't have the tools because it just keeps happening.
I didn't even realize there was tools to be had. I guess I was like totally oblivious to the idea that I needed tools. And I didn't think I had the tools. I just wasn't like, oh, there's tools. I was like, like until later on, it was more of like, I feel terrible and I want to cry all the time. I don't want to feel like this. Please help me, kind of a thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then it sounds like you over time realized like, okay, there's a bigger pattern here that needs to get unraveled. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. The only other thing that I was going to ask, or that I was curious about, is as you mentioned, you tried several different types of modalities and several different people. And I mean, I guess it's got to be rough, but like, did you know pretty quick? Did it take a while? Like, was it like, hey, I went to one session with this therapist, they suck, never going again? Or like, what sort of relationship did you allow to develop before you could tell if it would be a good fit or not?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And this is something I tell a lot of my patients, is that like, give it more than just one session, because like the initial session you're not magically going to feel, typically, maybe you will magically feel better after one session, because really the therapist is just gathering information and just kind of understanding your situation. So there might not be time in that first session to like actually do some deep processing. So I'd say, maybe after 3 to 5 sessions, and if you're feeling like you're not really connecting with your therapist, or you're not really getting much out of it, then yeah, maybe it's it's not necessarily to say therapy doesn't work for you. It's like, maybe this person is not the right fit for me. Maybe you need to find someone that, has a similar like heritage or background, ethnicity as you. Or maybe it's like, like for me, I prefer to work with a woman therapist. I did try a male therapist once, and maybe I'm biased because I'm like, he just doesn't get me kind of a thing. And he was kind of like, how I think maybe my partner would benefit from a male therapist because he's very analytical and thinking. And that wasn't when I had a male therapist before in the past. It was just like, he was just trying to like solve my problems. And I was like, this isn't, yeah, for me, that's not what was helpful for me. So, finding someone who jives with you is important, but also I think it's important to be open to new experiences. And not judge it from like the first session, and to give it some time, because sometimes it takes a little time to build that rapport.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And maybe I'll step into some of my experience now, but that really mirrors a lot of what I had happen, right? Where I've had a number of therapists in the last several years. I am somewhat recent to the phenomenon, having not had the resources or looked for the resources in the past. But it is the same kind of thing, right? Where I've had different therapists have basically different impacts on me. And some of them I felt I connected with, some I felt like I connected with and they didn't really help me that much. Some I felt like I connected with and they helped me a lot. Another piece to kind of add on is what you're going through compared to what their specialty actually is. So I went for some anxiety things that I wasn't really sure what was going on, and I was trying to figure out. And the first person that I interacted with was really awesome. I got along with her really well. She was great. She had some really good ideas. I don't think she specialized in anxiety, or at least she wasn't able to kind of read the processing that was going on for me. And then when I ended up switching to another person for other reasons, she was able to like really dial it in, almost immediately, be like, okay, this is what's going on, this, and this. Check out these resources, do this. And that was her whole thing. Her whole thing was specialized in anxiety and sort of this like this more like relational anxiety type of stuff. So I think there's a couple things that came up that are misconceptions that either I had or I think are pretty common. One is basically that it's not really like going to the doctor, right? When you go to the doctor and you have some sort of ailment, typically, or maybe, a lot of the time, they're going to run some tests and tell you what's going on. Yeah. Obviously, there are cases where you run some tests and you're like, yeah, I don't know. And you keep digging through it. But the expected experience at the doctor is to go in and they're able to diagnose some sort of something, or they get a test and then get back to you in a week or whatever else. Therapy is not that sort of experience. In general, you may be able to hone in on whatever the big high level problem is, like, hey, that's anxiety where it shouldn't be. But typically, the path to improving in that area or having a higher quality of life in regards to that specific thing is not as clear as it is for things that are strictly physical. And I don't know, maybe I'm talking out of my ear since you're actually a doctor and you'll correct me when I'm done. But, it seems like a lot of times it's like, take this antibiotic, get that cleared up, and then you should be good to go. Whereas in therapy, like, you may have to dig around to figure out the source of things. It may take quite a few sessions to really unwind some of these patterns and some of these other things. So that's just something that I've seen pretty common. Can't remember if that's a belief I held, but it may have been that it's like, oh, it's kind of like a doctor's visit. You go in, they tell you what's wrong, they tell you how to fix it. Not really
Does how therapy works. Yeah. And generally, like the therapist isn't supposed to necessarily like give you the answers or tell you what to do. They're supposed to like help you discover it on your own, giving you some like guidance to uncover it, because it's like they can tell you something, but you don't really like get it necessarily. And as an anxiety expert, because I've also dealt with anxiety myself on a personal level, and that's what therapy helped me sort through, as well as realizing it is super multifaceted, and it's definitely not like, oh yeah, go to your doctor and they'll give you anxiety medication and then you're magically cured of your anxiety. And it's like, oh, not really. And there's nothing wrong with taking medication at all. It just it goes deeper than that. It's like, there are so many different causes to anxiety. It could be, poor time management. It could be past trauma or childhood wounds. It could be hormonal imbalances. It could be foods you're eating. It could be, are you exercising? Are you there's hormones, there's so many variables that add to that. So it's really kind of like picking apart the pieces and not having the expectation that it's going to just be, I'm magically a happy person all of a sudden. It takes some work. And that's what I like to help people navigate through and understand that it's a process. That isn't so simple as take this antibiotic if you have strep throat kind of thing. That would be nice, but it doesn't usually work like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And you actually mentioned one of the other things that, again, I can't remember if it's I thought this way or if just generally I've seen this, but the idea that you're going to go in and your therapist is going to tell you, you need to do this, you need to do that. This is how you're supposed to live. You're not doing this right. Do this, do that. This is definitely something I used to believe. I used to think that they would go in and just sort of say here's the toolbox for managing emotions, use this. And since I had studied psych and done my own exploration and all this stuff, I just figured I don't need someone to hold my hand through using this toolbox. I've already been exposed to a lot of these tools and I know how to use them. So it's not really going to help me. Now that I've actually been through the experience, that's not what it's like at all. Definitely, if your therapist thinks there are tools that you don't have that are going to be useful, or exercises or practices or whatever else, they'll introduce you to them. But a lot of it is working with them to figure out kind of what might work or what you can try or what you think is going to be useful. And so it's a much more collaborative relationship than I thought it would be before going in. The other piece is it's much more self-driven, I guess is the way to put that, where if you come in and you have no idea what you need or what's wrong or what you want or anything like that, your therapist is going to do their best to help you, and they're going to do their best to find topics and start digging things out and whatever else. But it's going to be a much more fruitful experience if you have some sort of initial bearing on where your problems are. Maybe not necessarily what you need to do to fix them, but at least what it is that you are actually trying to do. So some part of the time that I was in therapy, I didn't really have anything specific I was trying to work on or work through or deal with or do anything. I just went to see what it was like.
Yeah.
And those were fine conversations, but far less fruitful than when I was actually dealing with something and kind of had a specific goal in mind. And so I guess I just want to highlight that if you just go for no reason with nothing, it'll still probably be useful. It's kind of nice to just vent about things and whatnot, but it's far more useful. You're going to see more progress and you're going to see more value, I think, if you have something that you're actually trying to do, some sort of goal, some sort of thing that you want to work on. And that could be as vague as I really just don't feel good, right? I just don't feel good most of the time and I need help with this. That's enough. But I went through some sessions where it's what do you want to talk about today? I was oh, I don't know. I just signed up and now I'm here. And obviously a lot of people don't have the resources for that, but I happened to be in a position where I was I can try this now. Yay. So that's another one of my learnings or part of my experience is actually having something, even if it's not super heavy or pressing or anything like that, but just something you want to talk about and focus on will help you dig out relevant pieces of information in your life and patterns and things like that.
Totally. Yeah. I think it's super, super important to have some sort of intention going into the session. And I do want to kind of peel back a little or elaborate more on something you said in that it doesn't necessarily have to be like a dire situation that you're dealing with. Don't wait till it's dire, then you go. And things could actually even be something I wanted to add was things can actually be going well in your life, but you can still have an intention in therapy of I want to improve my communication skills. I want to do this. I want to have, a juicier relationship. Kind of like, even though the relationship is good, I want it to be even better, kind of a thing. Like with couples counseling, even though me and my partner, we were doing it like every 2 to 3 weeks, but now we've kind of like dropped it to once a month right now. But even though we both have like a huge giant toolbox, and we're getting even more tools from our therapist. She's great, but and our relationship is good. We're not like on the brink of a breakup or anything. We're happily engaged and we're excited for our wedding, but we just want to be the strongest that we can. And even though we are confident in our ability to like work through conflicts, because we've gone through a lot of conflicts, and we've done a lot of like work on our communication to be able to do well. We know there's like always room for growth, and we know that even with all both of our experiences, that we still fall into the trap of getting upset over silly things and like frustrating each other and driving each other crazy, because we're human, and we're human. And so, I guess we're right now doing it for like, just to make sure the wheels are turning. We don't know if we're going to have a breakdown before next session or not. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. But, regardless, we're always in the intention of let's work on, improving our relationship and there's various aspects of our relationship that we want to improve on. So, we'll pull out, and sometimes our therapist offers us some ideas of like, oh yeah, that sounds good. Let's work on that today, kind of a thing. So, you can, if you're not sure, you can always kind of like, what are people talking about, just to give an idea. And then you can kind of pick the one that resonates the most with you. Having a goal and intention definitely makes a difference versus being like sitting there and being like, I don't know what to talk about. Yeah. And it makes your therapist's life a lot easier too. Yes.
Yeah. And going along with something that you mentioned, I think it makes a big difference whether it's, or not makes a big difference. It doesn't have to be something that is negative that's weighing you down. You can be, like you mentioned, in a good place, looking for something even better. Like one of the things that I've been exploring recently is, my life now is pretty stable and centered, and I have these tools and things are going well. And, I'm used to having this like, oh, I got to grind and figure it out and push to the next level and push to the next level and get this done and do that. And the reality of the situation for me right now is that's not true. So I'm having a little bit of like a weird time where it's like, oh, I need to work really, really super hard, but actually, do I? Because I don't know if I do. Anyway, so that's one of the things that I'm working through. And it's not like this big negative, like, oh, like, oh no, my life is so bad if I can't figure this out. Things are going well. And there are still things to work through and figure out. So I just wanted to highlight, like you mentioned, it doesn't have to be things are bad, right? If it's a scale from 1 to 10 and 10 is the worst ever possible life, like there are still things that you can work on if you're at like a 3, 4, 5, 6, and like you were saying, you don't want to wait till it becomes a 10. If you start noticing things, even if they seem very small now, it's a really awesome resource to have that extra person, that extra set of eyes and ears to kind of look at your problems while they're small, on the off chance that they're growing, because unless you're keeping track of this stuff yourself, it's really easy for things to go from like, oh, this week, this thing happened, I didn't really like it. This week, the same thing happened, I didn't really like it. And then it's you miss the patterns and you miss some of the things that compound unless you're keeping track, which most of us are not doing automatically. But if you're going to therapy and the same thing keeps coming up, then your therapist at some point is going to recognize that and bring it up as like, hey, there's this pattern. I don't know if you've seen it, but almost every time you come in, you talk about the same thing. Like maybe we need to spend some time in that area, and you may not even realize that that's a problem or a growing problem yet. So again, just highlighting that it can be useful pretty much universally. I know not everyone has the resources to make that happen, but it's not just for this, level 10 escalated crisis, like, what am I going to do?
Yeah. And it's not like, oh, I'm on the brink of a divorce or my life is falling apart kind of a thing. Like I do even now, I hadn't been in therapy in a few years. I've been doing other things for my personal growth and development. But I realized through doing my couples counseling just to work on improving my relationship, I realized that, there's still work to work on me, because I was getting triggered by things that was like bringing up my past of not feeling like good enough. And I was like, oh, I thought I already worked through that like way long ago, and I thought I was good, but apparently it still comes up for me. So I was like, oh, maybe I do need to like go back and do something just to kind of maintain a more like positive, confident version of myself, because I realize when I'm not doing something, even though my life is good, things are going well, I'm just like, I know where I've been when I'm like being proactive about my mental health and my self-care. And, when I'm kind of like out of my routine of self-care and having some support, like I just feel like less motivated, less excited, like less excited for life to like be as productive as I can. And so I just like, I know I can get back to it if I just have some extra support. So I did actually recently, because maybe I'm biased because I felt like I had plateaued with therapy. I was like, well, I'm gonna, even though I do hypnotherapy in my practice, because it's really great for confidence and motivation, and I'm like doing it regularly for people, I was like, oh, I should do some for myself. And so I just started seeing a hypnotherapist for myself recently, and it was actually a great initial session. I was like wary of trying someone new, but I was given it a shot. So even after like a decade of therapy and all the things that I've done, I'm still like, it's an ongoing journey. It's not like I reach a final destination with my mental health. It's like our mental health is like up and down all the time. And, yes, I still deal with anxiety. I feel like I have a huge toolbox to deal with anxiety. I'm way better equipped, but I don't let anxiety define me anymore. And I don't feel like I let anxiety overpower me, because I know what I need to do, but I also know that, some extra support, as well as just helping me with motivation and confidence is always helpful. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the really nice things is just having someone who is basically trained and practices every day at just like listening and helping people with their stuff, right? Like,
right.
Sometimes it's just nice to have someone that you can feel confident, you can genuinely open up to and not hold anything back and be completely just vent or whatever else, talk about things without all of the other relationships have some sort of baggage or boundaries or like shape or something, right? Like they're just different. So at a fundamental level, it's just nice to have an extra person that is not going to be like, well, that's stupid, you suck, why are you doing this? Like, they might ask why you're doing something, but not in a judgmental way.
Right.
So some of us have that as a resource. And I know a lot of people don't. They don't really have anyone that they can turn to and open up in that way. And even when you do have people like that, it's still nice to have that extra, this relationship is going to bleed out and influence other things in my life. Usually it's like a very safe, controlled place to vent out anything that you need to, or just fully express whatever you need to. And that, like I said, regardless of the expertise, which is also nice, that alone is a tool that can't really, is hard to get other places, I guess is the way I'll put it.
No, I totally agree with that, because I think there is healing in just being heard and understood, and not everyone is trained to do that in the world. And just a kind of comment on the thing about not everyone having like the resources for it. One thing I will say, if you are near like a local university, you might not be able to get like a licensed therapist or a counselor, but you might be able to get like a student in training for like free or really minimal cost, if you just inquiry it, because they have to be trained, and they are learning. But it's at least it's like having the experience of being heard and being understood, which I think again is healing in itself. And they could offer insight, even if they don't have as much experience as a trained licensed professional who's been doing it for 20 years, they might have insight. They might have gone through therapy themselves that they might be able to offer something beneficial for you. So you never know until you try. So if you're limited on resources, there's resources out there but you have to look. Yeah.
And I will say that the last time I actually looked, because I was looking for other people, I was able to find quite a few things that were very affordable. Things like sliding scales that are based on income, right? And it's as low as, like $10-20, which still might be, a good amount of money for people. But I think for the majority of people, that level is going to start being affordable. So if you actually look for the resources, they are out there. It can take some effort, but obviously if it's something that is going to benefit you greatly, then it's worth putting that time in.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally. Yeah. So I think we covered this topic pretty well. Were there any final thoughts that you think are important to speak on?
The only other thing I wanted to mention is, even having a psych training, even having been exposed to a bunch of these tools and whatnot, I still had preconceptions about what therapy would be that were just wrong. So if it's something that you've considered or think might be helpful to you, I would say just try it before you form a judgment. Because I know that held me back in times in my life that I really could have used those extra resources. And I just let those stereotypes or whatever else that was rolling around in my head overwrite what the experience would have actually been. So I just want to encourage anyone who's on the fence and has not tried it to at least try it and see what it is and how it can fit in your life.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point that you made. And that's one of my little soapbox things. Just people I'm like, oh yeah, is that still a thing where people feel weird or they feel like they might be judged if they go to therapy? And I'm like, no, I mean, maybe because I've done so many things, I'm like, I don't care what people think anymore. But really, there's nothing wrong or bad if you go to a therapist. It's like seeking out support for your mental health. That doesn't mean you're weak. I think that takes something to try to get help. So, that's one of my little soapbox things. It's can't do everything on your own. Get support, especially from a trained professional, can really make the difference. So yeah, I hate the little, I think it's becoming less so lately of the, it's not the word I'm thinking, not taboo, but
stigmatized.
What?
Stigmatized?
Oh yeah, stigmatized. I was like, what is that word I'm thinking of? That, stigmatized. Yes. So let's break free from that and get over that and get the help we need if we need it. Yeah. So that being said, again, I'm just going to reiterate what Donovan said earlier in this episode, that we are wanting to hear from you, our audience, on what do you want to hear from us? What topics do you want us to cover? We'd love your feedback. So put a comment in the comments below or send us an email to HappyTalksPodcast@gmail.com. You could also just reach out to us, DM us on our various platforms. We would love to hear from you. So be sure to shout out and let us know what you want us to talk about in helping you be happier and healthier. That being said, Donovan, thank you for a lovely conversation about therapy. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it and then go and subscribe to my channel and ring the bell so you get notified when the next video comes out. If you check out in the description below, go to my website where you can get my free fast and easy guide to stress relief. Thanks again for checking us out, and we'll see you next time.